Hey, Don Bonnell here on June the 2nd, 2013. Hey, today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that we talked about in our small group at church today. It was and the title of the lesson was the power of a story. And I was kind of really intrigued because what happened is we have 17 people today in the group, and the teacher gave us an opportunity to each tell our own personal story. And as I was listening, and 3 out of 4 people told their story, and I thought how wonderful that is. What a great vehicle that is. So of course I uh, I I came home and I was browsing the internet, and I looked at the destruction out there in Oklahoma from the tornadoes on Saturday, and it started to get me thinking. Many years ago, and I was stationed for a short time in Lawton, Oklahoma. It's an Army base. I was in the Marines, but while I was there, there was, I think, in that 3 month period, about 80 tornadoes that had come through there, and not in that tornado alley area. And I turned to one day to a friend of mine that was a local, and I said, "Man, there's a lot of tornadoes." I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, but Southern Illinois, we had a few tornadoes, but this was crazy. And he said, "Oh, this is a light year." And of course, I thought, that's him talking, talking smack. But you know what? Uh, Back a couple years ago, back in 2011, in the month of April, there was over 250 tornadoes that came through our nation, and just all kinds of destruction, and there was about 80 in just a couple days that landed there in Oklahoma. And I thought, wow, that's impressive. That's that's something else. I guess the guy wasn't kidding. And as I was looking at the various pictures of the destruction that was caused by these tornadoes, I thought, wow, that's got to be the most powerful thing on the earth. And then I started talking, or started thinking, and I realized, that small group that this morning actually talked about something that was more powerful than a tornado. Tornadoes are powerful and they can be destructive, but the power of a story is is great, because a bad story in the wrong hands can be destructive, but stories can build people up, and it can cure things. And as I think about a story and the power of the story, I I think it's powerful for several reasons. One, as I was listening to my friends and the members of my small group, each of them had a story, and some of those people would never in their lives stand up in front of 15, 20, 25 people and teach a lesson or speak publicly. It was very natural for them to tell their own story. And they were able to do that because telling a story is very natural, because it's very, very personal. I think another reason why stories are so very powerful is that they are, because of their personal, you can't really argue against it. You know, we can argue about ideas and philosophies. We can argue about politics and economics and religion. We can give different opinions on things, but you can't really argue with a story. You may not believe the story, but you can't argue it, because it's personal, because it's true for them. This is what I mean. Years ago, I worked as a salesman in an electronics store, and I can remember one day an older gentleman came in, and he went up to one of our clerks, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a large screen tube television. What's the best one that's around? Well, this young clerk looked at him and said, well, Mitsubishi. Well, I saw this gray-haired old man, and his face got red, and he got angry. He said, I'll never buy such a thing. And of course, there was confusion on this young clerk's face. He didn't understand what it was. So I intervened. I went over to him and I said, excuse me, sir, would you be willing to explain why? And he started telling a story about he, many, many years ago, as a World War II Navy flyer, had seen the destruction that the Mitsubishi Zero, which was a fighter plane that was used by the Japanese, had really caused a lot of destruction, and many of his friends had lost their lives. And as he told the story, you could see that all of a sudden, this older gentleman was instantaneously, over 40 years ago this had happened, he was brought back into the moment and he was reliving that. When he got done telling the story, the young salesman, understood, and he apologized for offending the man. And then the gentleman went ahead and bought a television. But but that story was so powerful, was so vivid. You could argue about the quality of the television and how good the company is and all the things that they're doing. But to him, his personal story was what really made a difference in his life. Another thing about a story is that a simple story can convey universal truths. I think that's why probably, religious leaders like Confucius and Buddha and Jesus all use stories to explain universal truths. And with those stories, with the power of a story is so interesting, because with a story you can explain to, think of Aesop's fables. Aesop's fables have taught principles to children for thousands of years. With the story of the Good Samaritan, the power of that story has built hospitals, created charitable organizations. It's done so many amazing things. Now, I guess the last thing when I think about a story is that, so often we try to convince or argue with other people, and we're arguing facts and things of that nature, and that's great. But what's even better is if you can tell your story, if you can communicate in stories. I think there's a deeper emotional reason why we do what we do, and people connect. Think of the power of the story of Gandhi and what that's done throughout the world. An amazing, amazing story. So here's my challenge, everybody. My challenge is this. Let's stop arguing and start telling stories. Let's stop trying to convince people, and let's tell stories. Let's harness the power of stories and make it more powerful than the power of a tornado. One of the things that I love hearing in Empower Network are all the stories of all the people. They're so powerful. Each person that tells a story, they tell a story that's personal, and it's powerful, and it touches the lives of other people. I don't know what your story is, but each of us have a story, and it's worthwhile hearing that story. Empower Network encourages us to use our story to empower others. If you're interested in looking into Empower Network, let me give you the website, www.easysteps123.com. Check it out. Remember, the power of a story can be more powerful than a tornado.